just to clarify, right? You're talking about like the picture you sent us for Dimension student copy.
What do you mean?
You said the PowerPoint. We're supposed to save a picture from PowerPoint, and I'm just clarifying which PowerPoint you're talking about.
The astronomy one.
Ah, okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so the lunar cycle, like I said, starts with the new moon, goes to the full moon, and then back to the new moon. So in this case, right, it's a cyclic and predictable event. We can predict when the next new moon will be. That process, because it's from our perception, is about approximately 30 days. We learned that yesterday, right, which is about the length of a month. All right, so what are the phases, right? So it's the apparent changes in the shape due to the position of the moon, okay? So it depends on the way that the light is being reflected off of the moon and then from our perspective on Earth. Okay, so the phases, the moon is not changing. It's not disappearing and then getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger till it's completely full and then smaller and smaller and smaller. It's not actually changing. That's very important that you understand that it's not actually changing. Okay, it's just the perception from our point of view on Earth. Okay, the phase names. Right? We're not getting into the nitty gritty yet. These are just the basic names. You need to memorize the names and what they look like in the picture. Okay? So first we start off with a new moon. The new moon is when it is completely black, okay, or where it looks like it disappears. Okay? Then you have the crescent. The crescent is exactly what it sounds like. It's just a little sliver of the moon that is in the light. Then you have the quarter moon. Okay, from our perspective, the quarter moon looks like half of it is in light and half of it is in dark. But you have to remember that we're only seeing half of the moon. Since we're only seeing half of the moon, technically that light side is only a quarter of the moon that we're seeing, hence why it's called the quarter phase. Then there's a gibbous. The gibbous is about 3/4 of the moon until it becomes a full moon. So the gibbous is when we see a majority of the moon until it is completely round. At that point, it is called a full moon. Okay? Now, there are two versions of this. This is going to be, I said, a cyclic and predictable event, right? It goes from new, crescent, quarter, gibbous, full, gibbous, quarter, crescent, new, crescent, quarter, gibbous, full, gibbous, quarter, crescent, new, and it keeps going back and forth and back and forth. Okay? Notice how I didn't say it goes new, crescent, quarter, gibbous, full, noon. It doesn't do that. Okay? It slowly became into the light, become full, and it's going to slowly go back into darkness to become new again. Okay? So it's a cyclic event. It goes in a circle, right? And it goes in that order. It's kind of the same thing when I did it for the apparent motion of the sun, where the highest point was the summer and the lowest point was the winter, right? So it was like June, July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, right? It's the same kind of a thing, except now we're doing it with the phases. All right, there are two versions of this. They are waxing, W-A-X-I-N-G, okay, and waning, W-A-N-I-N-G. Now, this should sound familiar. A lot of you guys learned this in 7th or 8th grade, so it should sound familiar. If you don't remember it, it's okay. That's my job to figure it out, okay? But it should sound familiar to you. Okay, so what waxing is this. I want you to think of when the really nice custodians are waxing the floor, right? Or you're putting an extra coat of wax on the floor in the gym. Okay, what ends up happening? Well, as they move the machinery over, right? It ends up getting shiny. It ends up getting brighter, okay? The same thing that happens here, right? If we're talking about the waxing phases, it's when you start at new and work your way down to full. So it'll be new, then waxing crescent, then waxing quarter, then waxing gibbous, then the full moon. Okay? Because they're getting brighter. We're going to see more of the moon at that point. Okay? Questions so far? Do you guys still?
Just a really curious question. What made them decide to name it waxing?
I have no idea. I'll be perfectly honest. Why don't you Google it and let me know?
Got you.
All right. All right. So then the second part is the waning. Waning is when the moon is becoming darker. It's going to work its way from full to a new moon. So it's going to go from full to waning gibbous to waning quarter to waning crescent. Okay, so waxing is when they're getting nice and bright and shiny. It's becoming more in the light from our perspective. And then waning is going to be in the opposite. Okay, so let's go to this picture. All right, I'm actually going to sign in really quick so I can do this on my iPad. Hopefully it will work.
Yeah, Miss Gonzalez.
Yes.
I sent the thing to Notability and it's not there. Like that picture specifically isn't in it. I see the initial moon picture and then the phases, but I don't see that picture.
That's very weird. All right, take a screenshot of it.
What's the title of it on Classroom?
Pictures from the PowerPoint, I believe it says. It's a fabulous version of me.
Yeah,
You
same
want
thing
me
as
to
me.
email it to you?
I can't see it.
If the picture's not there, then take a screenshot of it real quick.
And email it to you?
You just have to scroll down and then it should be there because I found it.
It's down at the bottom.
You posted two like links. It's in the second links. It's on the third page on the second link.
Thank you. I thought it was there. I just want to make sure. Okay. Let's see.
Wait, what is the link called?
It's from a while ago. It says that it is the pictures from the PowerPoint.
I know it's on the PowerPoint. What I'm saying is I sent it to Notability and I see the sunlight bars, but I don't see the picture next to that.
So then take a picture of this. Okay, so that we can all do this together because you do not want to be alone in this. I did not. My handwriting is atrocious right now. Making a little key off to the side so that you guys can see it. All right, so that's supposed to say motion. Does everybody see this picture now?
Yes.
Okay, does everyone see that I'm writing on it? Because we had issues yesterday, so I want to make sure that I'm
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so first thing you want to take into consideration is the motion of the revolution, right? So it's going in a counterclockwise fashion, right? So the orbit, the moon in its orbit is going to be moving, right, counterclockwise. All right, that's the first thing. These outer moons are the pictures, like right here. Those are the pictures of how we actually see it from Earth. Okay? The moon that's here is showing us how we get to that, or how the light is reflecting off of it. Okay, so how do we figure out what phase it's in? The easiest way to figure it out is figure out which way the sunlight is moving. Okay, where is the sunlight? In this case, it just happens to be to the right. Don't assume that every time I ask you or give you a diagram and I ask you where's the new moon, do not assume that it's always going to be the one to the right. You can assume, however, that it's always going to be the one that is in between, directly in between the sunlight and the earth. Okay, so how do we actually figure it out? Well, you make a circle on the middle of the, what just happened? What just happened? Little things happen. Okay, you make like a little dot. Okay, thank you. On the center of the earth. Then you draw a straight line from, or as close to a straight line from the center of the earth to the center of the moon. You guys with me so far?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Then you're going to draw a perpendicular line. Like that. Let's make this green. We're going to make this green so you can actually see the difference. Okay. Do you see how the entire side that us in the center of that earth is seeing is completely in darkness?
Yes.
We see this whole section here, right, is completely in darkness. That's how we get a new moon. Okay? Because from our perspective, okay, the moon is in complete darkness. It's not. It's got the sunlight hitting it from the back, but from our perspective, it looks as if there is nothing happening with the moon, right? We can't see any of it. It disappears, quote unquote. Okay? So, let's do the next phase. Now, remember, it's going in a counterclockwise fashion. Since it's going in a counterclockwise fashion, that tells me, right, we're going from noon all the way to full. Where the new moon is, the one on the complete opposite side here, okay, this one here, is automatically going to be our full moon. So if you can recognize one of those two, if you can recognize either the new moon or the full moon, okay, then you will be fine. If you can't recognize the new moon or the full moon, then you won't be fine, okay? So as long as you can recognize one or the other, right? So in this case, we are in, you see the moon in 100% light, all right? You guys with me so far? Are you okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're good.
You're good? Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to, I'm going to do it as well here, but I want you to try and draw this the exact same way for each of the other 6 phases. See how much you actually see versus how much is actually in darkness. All right, so I want you to do that now. So you can notice, Okay. So if you notice, as you're going from the new moon, right, to the full moon, little by little, more of the moon is going to be in the light. Nope, I don't want it to be like that. Yeah, you have to be careful, guys, because those lines end up trying to be straight, and they're really not. All right. All right, you want to draw those lines as straight as possible. Right? Who knew in Earth Science today you were going to be coloring? Well, I did because I planned it, but. All right, so here's half and half. Right. See, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just to get your point across. Your math teachers would be so proud of you learning how to draw perpendicular lines. Alright, we're just coloring and drawing lines. Okay, so to the best of your ability, it should look something like this. Yes?
Yeah.
You guys finished? Or you need a few more minutes?
A few more minutes.
Okay.
2 minutes.
Okay. Not a big deal. That's why I asked, right? But do you guys see how as we go from a new to a full moon, that the amount of light or amount of sunlight that is being reflected off of the moon is getting bigger? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. That's the whole point. Now, it will be your responsibility for being able to figure out what, first of all, is it waxing or waning? How much of, or to be able to draw how much of the moon is in the light, identifying the phase, is it crescent, is it quarter, is it gibbous, is it new, is it full, right? And then the hardest part about this, guys, is if you notice, okay, if you notice, they're mirror images of each other, right? They're the opposite. So as you go from the new moon phase to the full moon phase, right, the moon seems to be on the right side, or the light of the moon seems to be on the right side. As you go from the full moon phase to the new moon phase, the light on the moon seems to be on the left side. There's a major reason behind that, and I'm going to show it to you in a second when you guys are ready. Just let me know when you guys are ready. Why can't I draw legs on a stick figure person today? This is just not happening. There we go. All right, you guys ready?
Yeah.
Everybody else?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so there's stick figure Miss G standing on the earth. Yay, that's me. And I want to figure out which way, or do I have a waxing? Do I have a waning? Is it a crescent, quarter, gibbous? What is it? Okay. Now, the way that you want to do this is just like when we did the Coriolis effect. It depends on which way you are facing. Okay. So with the Coriolis effect, if you were facing north this way, it moved to our right. But if you were going south in the north, our right went like that. It's the same thing here. It's based on where the sunlight is hitting. Okay, so the sunlight is going in this direction. All right, which is what we can see. Right, and what ends up happening is it's hitting the crescent on that side. It hits the moon on this side as well. Okay, all right, so when you look at it that way, it's depending on your perception. So if I'm looking at the waxing crescent, right, the sunlight is hitting it from the right-hand side. But from my perception, my right is over here, right? Then if the moon is on the other side, okay, it's hitting it on the left side. From my perception, this is my left. But when you're looking at it this way, right? You have to look at it this way, right? This is my left, okay? Which is why when you draw it, this ends up being on my left. Okay, do you guys kind of get that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so it's going to be your responsibility to be able to, I can give you a diagram like this. I can give you a diagram like this and then say to you, okay, if I labeled this, let's go with like position 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I could say to you, okay, identify position 3. And you would have to call it the first quarter. Okay, I believe they'll actually accept a waxing quarter as well. but it would have to either be the first quarter or the waxing quarter because we know what that means. Okay. It's also because of where you see it. You're seeing it in the first quarter here, and then for the third quarter, you're actually seeing that specific part of the moon. Okay. So that's going to be your responsibility to be able to figure out and identify. I could even give you a blank version of this without all the lines and everything else and say to you, okay, draw position 6. Here's a circle. Show me what position 6 would look like. And you would have to fill it 3/4 to your left. Because if you filled it 3/4 to your right, it's a different version. Okay? That would be your waxing gibbous instead of your waning gibbous. Okay? Are you guys okay with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So let's go back to our notes then. If it wants me to stop sharing. Okay. Okay. So, resume my presentation. All right. So, the moon phases, all right, are actually, so here it is basically figured out, right? If you start at the new, you go to waxing crescent first quarter, waxing gibbous, waning third. So make sure you understand that this picture is backwards. It starts in the bottom at the new phase and then works its way up in a circular fashion, okay? So what causes the phases, right? The fact that the moon revolves around the earth. Since the moon revolves around the earth, right, that's going to cause these moon phases. That's going to change how, from our perspective, the light is reflecting off of it. All right, so it all comes down to the fact that the moon is revolving around the earth. All right, the difference between waxing and waning, right? Waxing means that on the right-hand side, from our perspective, the light is hitting and it will get bigger from that. Waning is when it is starting off, or the phase will actually be on the left-hand side and the rest will be in the darkness. Okay, so waning is when less of the moon surface can be seen, and waxing is when more of the moon's surface is slowly being seen, right? Because for waxing, it's when you start at the new moon and you work your way up to the full moon. All right, so waxing is when you go from new to full, and waning is when you go from full to new. Okay, that's something you kind of just have to commit to memory. It's not on the reference table. The phases of the moon are not on the reference table either. Okay, so you want to make sure that you are memorizing what order it goes in. And then also what you might want to do to practice is change up the location of where the sunlight is, and then try to identify where each of the individual moon phases are. Okay, so instead of being on the right, what happens if it's on the left? What happens if it's at the north? What happens if it's at the south? Okay, if you can identify the new moon and the full moon, and then remember what order that the phases go in, how it's new, crescent, quarter, gibbous, full, right? Then you'll be able to do this perfectly fine. Okay, it's one of those things, once you identify one, you can identify all. Okay, and that's going to be your responsibility. All right, so why does the moon rise later each day? And the reason for that is because, it's because as the earth is rotating, the moon is revolving around us. So it almost looks like the moon is rising later and later and later in the day, okay? Now that has to do with, when we were talking about it before, how the moon has to play catch up in its revolution in order to get to that new moon phase again, right? Because even though it moved 360 degrees, it takes an extra 2 to 3 days to actually get into another new moon phase, okay? So it's constantly playing catch up because we are rotating. Okay. What kind of event, guys, are these phases? We've said it a couple of times.
Celestial.
They're what?
Lunar eclipses?
They're not lunar eclipses, but what type of event is this?
Predictable and cyclic.
Right, cyclic, which means that it's predictable. Very good. Right? It goes in a circle. You can predict when the next new moon is going to be if you know when the current new moon is. Okay? All right, so here's just a little clip. They're going to let me play it. Let's see. It's kind of cute about the daytime moon. Good afternoon, moon. It can be kind of unnerving. So Bruce from Minneapolis wants to know why. Why can we see the moon during the day?
You don't see the sun coming out in the nighttime, do you? Show some respect.
The sun and the moon aren't opposites. The moon doesn't start rising as soon as the sun goes down. The moon appears just as often during the day as it does at night. It can just be harder to see. So let's travel back to 7th grade for a second. Not that 7th grade. This one. Remember, you have the Earth that orbits the sun, then the Earth that also spins itself, and that's what creates night and day. Then we have the moon that goes around the Earth. We can see the moon because the sun's light reflects it back to our eyes. Sometimes the part of the moon we see is facing the nighttime side of Earth, but as the moon moves one day at a time, sometimes it faces the daytime side. And that's when we have to look hard for it. It can't be hidden by the clouds. You have to look at the right part of the sky at the right time of day. And here's another catch. You won't see the moon in the days surrounding the new moon because the sun's brightness sort of washes it out. And you'll never see a full moon when the sun is in the sky. So to all the moms and dads out there, the next time your kids ask this question, and I promise they will, just send them to me. I got you. So really quickly before the bell rings, I wanted to show you, right? This is a gibbous. All right, it's specifically a waxing gibbous because you see how all of this is filled in on the right-hand side except for this little tiny sliver of moon right here, right? Versus this one, which is a full moon where you can see the full circle is being actually reflected with the light. Okay? So,
Miss Gonzalez, question. So, could both of these moons happen all in one day?
a gibbous and a full moon?
Yeah, so as it was lighter outside, and you said it's a gibbous,
Mm-hmm.
but then when it got darker outside, then it was like a full moon. So could these,
Technically, no. Because it doesn't move that fast. The moon's not going to move that fast that it's going to slide into our view and be automatically full. It stays in one phase. If you think about it, it's about 30 days, right, is one full cycle. So if it's 30 days, we have 8 different cycles, right? So what's 30 divided by 8, guys?
3.75.
Okay, so it's about 4, it's just shy of being 4 days, right? So that tells me that before it hits the next cycle, when it goes from new to crescent, and then from crescent, it'll stay as crescent for 3 to 4 days before it gets to completely a quarter. And then it'll stay in quarter, even though it's still increasing, right, by a little bit until, it'll stay in gibbous a couple of extra days. So that'll happen, but it'll never be necessarily that it's gibbous and full moon within the same 24 hours. Okay. Guys, the period is over. So I just want to say I will see you tomorrow. All right. And if you have any questions, just email me. All right.
Have a good day.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Have a good day.
You too. Guys, you need to hang up.